que la hemos preparado con mucha emoción y a ver si sube esto. Solo quería decir como un poco el propósito, recapitular un poco el propósito del día de hoy, introducir al equipo nuestro de investigación de Inglaterra y pasarle la palabra directamente ya a mi colega Jim para que pueda comenzar con la presentación de nuestro proyecto. ¿Perdón? Ah. Sí. So, bueno, tienen traducción, así que no. I'm going to switch now to English. So I will do this thing where I will move a little bit between Spanish and English for the benefit of the audience. So welcome, everybody. So I wanted to just very briefly put us all in the room, remind us why we're here and what we're trying to achieve today with this event, the goals of the day, if you will. So truly what we wanted is to have a day of exchange, not just between people in different countries, which we do have in the room, but also between people with different kinds of experiences. So we wanted to bring together researchers, practitioners, and also people working in public policy to think about this core question of collaborative housing models, care practices, and aging. This is the question that we've been grappling with in our own project in the UK, which you will hear about in one moment. But we wanted to get an idea of how other people are also thinking about this, conceptualizing this intersection in their own countries, but also in their own practices and also in their own lived environments, and to learn from one another during the day through a set of different kinds of exchanges. So you've seen the brief. I'm not going to go too much more into this. I think that's really the main point. Just to rehash what we're going to be doing now, this first bit of the morning, like I said, we're running a bit late, so that's why I'm rushing. But we have 3 researchers. So Jim Hudson, who will be presenting first, is from the CHIC. Our project is in short called CHIC, from the CHIC research team. We have other team members here. We're a large team, so there's Amy Falstead, who's here, Misa, who's here in the back as well. Mara is going to be facilitating later one of our workshop sessions. Mara Ferreri, she's also here. She's part of the advisory group. We have another member of the advisory group, Jeremy Portia. Jeremy's back here. Karen, who's right there in the back, she's on the table. So she's the project leader, actually, the PI on our project. And then Kath Scanlon, who's also there in the back of the table. So we are the members of our team from the UK. And then we're going to have Anne Labit from France presenting on her research, and Daniel López Gómez here from Barcelona presenting his work. And the way that this is going to run, we're each going to speak 15 minutes, and then we're going to sit here, all of us together, and have a bit of a discussion and questions, and that should be as informal as possible, and the idea is to get really your reactions and your questions. And then we will have a coffee break. And then just housekeeping, the bathrooms, I believe, are towards the left of this corridor. So if anybody needs to go to the loo at any point, that's the way to do that. I'm going to stop there because I want to hand over to Jim, who's going to present on our project, what it is that we've been doing, and what are some of the core questions and ways that we want us to kind of think about the rest of the day. So yeah. I can do the slides.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shall I use that? I've got that, yeah. So, yeah, I'll try and stay short on this one because I know we're kind of tight on time. And I'll give you a flavor of the project rather than a lot of detail. So, collaborative housing and innovations in care, we decided to call this. And we've been working with 6 groups. I'll come back to that in a moment. over the last 2 years, we still have another 7-8 months to go. So what I'm talking about right now is a very kind of snapshot of our thinking. I've done quite a few presentations recently, and every time I do one, we've got a different idea about where we're actually going with this. So you'll have to bear with that. So fundamentally, our research question was, in what ways might collaborative housing meet the social care and support needs of older people? And as I say, we looked at 6 projects. Do you want to go on to the next one? 3 of which were co-housing, and 3 of which were not. Which I'll come on to. The 3 co-housing projects, this is kind of odd because we've anonymized all the groups that we work with in doing these outputs. But actually, one of the groups is here today anyway, which is New Ground. I think I can use the name, can't I? And New Ground we've called Hazel Lanes Co-housing, the first group here. We thought that was nice. But New Ground is we'll have a think about that. So 3 co-housing schemes. The first one, New Ground, are the only explicitly senior, so-called co-housing. The second one is kind of older people, but not officially. Most of the members are 50 and upwards. The third one is truly intergenerational. Not that senior co-housing is not intergenerational, but for the third scheme, the members span from a 9-month-old to somebody in their 90s, so quite a span. Actually, I'll talk about the findings for this now. I'm not going to go deep into our findings, but we, as you can imagine, in response to our original question, we did find, unsurprisingly, that all 3 groups are very socially close. They collaborate in many things, and one of the reasons for that is the intention to collaborate and the social activities that they live together through. But something that we found kind of more interesting in a way in the context of health and social care. Actually, something I should say is that none of these 3 groups have any collaborative formal social care or care services. Anybody who requires care is technically getting that care for themselves, making those arrangements. But what we did find, just to go to the next one, we started doing, for each of the groups and for specific health situations for specific individuals, we did a care network map. We've done quite a few of these, but this is just a snapshot of one of them, to try and pick apart what residents actually do for each other around different health situations. In the case of this guy, Eric, not his real name, he fell ill during the pandemic, and it turned out, unfortunately, that he had lung cancer and died about 18 months later. During that time, the community was supportive in all sorts of ways, but what we realized was that they came together in a way that was something much more than just kind of helping out, much more than just good neighbors, which we're calling advocacy. In the 3 or 4 members of the group stepped up and acted as that person's, for a while, acted as his family almost, to support him with the complexity, particularly in the UK, the complexity of health services and social care services that are now just not working anymore. Eric's son lived in Australia, I think, was it? And was able to come over to the UK, but then was also supported by the group during that period. And this is something that, on the surface of things, you don't always appreciate, but being able to spend a very long time with the groups, over 2 years, these kind of situations have started to emerge. Next slide. And then the 3 other case models. So I'm calling them other because they're kind of difficult to describe, but one is quite easy. The one on the right actually is a housing co-op for older people. As far as we know in the UK, it's one of only 2 or 3 older people's housing co-ops. The first scheme is simply a retirement scheme that was just built for open market sale, but the residents took over the management of that scheme legally. And the second one is what we would say is closest to a model called extra care, where again, the residents manage the thing themselves through a company. So of the schemes, the second and third one there both have some form of social care, personal care support. The one in the middle has the qualifications to be fully supportive, can go as far as personal care through its staff. The first one just had a site manager that they pay. And I guess they're different from the co-housing, certainly in the UK models, because they all have a financial and legal model that can employ some level of staff. What we wondered, and I'm interested to find out from other groups and researchers today, what we wondered is, it seemed to us there's kind of a trade-off between the intentionality and agency of the 3 co-housing groups and these other 3 groups who we felt, for instance, there's a lot of members of these 3 groups who are members of the community but take very little part in the community. They enjoy the services that are provided, but if you walked into one of these schemes, you probably wouldn't know that it was a collaborative housing community by our definition. And we did wonder whether there is this kind of payoff between agency and intentionality and the feel of these kind of communities. And perhaps that's just a thing to do with UK models, but perhaps it's a wider phenomenon. So as Melissa said, just on the next slide. So we wanted, these are the kind of foremost questions in our mind at the moment. But I think also hopefully a useful setup for the day. So I guess the question that I haven't talked about at all really, but will hopefully come out later. How can the design of collaborative housing accommodate care, by which we mean not the social design, but the physical and legal and financial design? Not financial, because that's the second one. What kind of financial models should be considered for social care in collaborative housing over time? And thirdly, how can collaborative housing cater to diverse needs and identities of older people? I'm going to leave it there. We have an advantage as a team that we've just recently made a short film about the whole project, which we're going to show in the break. In the coffee break, which gives much more of a richer feeling, I think, for the scheme than I have been able to do. So I'll leave it there and go for time. Thank you.
So we're gonna questions. Vamos a esperar para pregunta y discusión más adelante. Entonces, ahora le paso la palabra a Anne. So, wherever do you want to sit here? Or yes? Oh, no, we're going to hold them for after, with everybody together. So, you want to sit here? Yeah, it's possible. So I can... This is here. This is just okay.
Okay, hello. Thank you for the invitations in Barcelona. I must first apologize about my English. I'm French, and so I try to do my best. But okay, I will present a big participatory action research we have made in France on housing and aging and solidarity, and co-housing and aging, actually. I will present the context in France. I think I have to go faster on this part. Then our questions. The methods we used, which is very special because we work really, we do research with the people, with the inhabitants in the co-housing. They were completely part of the research. And then I give some results. Of course, it's perhaps the most important. I try to keep some times for this. Just to say that in France, the context is such, people are living at home. They are aging in place, like probably in UK or in Spain. Some of them are living in assisted living and nursing home, but not so much. They come in when they are very old, very, very old. The average age of coming in a nursing home is, I think, is 7, 8, or so it's very old. We have some sheltered housing, and then people live at home. That means in for-profit retirement facilities, perhaps extra care, I don't know. It's special retirement place for seniors, but which are expensive and a little bit luxury, and most of the people live in their own home. And then we have what we called alternative housing. So it's new, so it's from 20 years. We have some new form of housing. Alternative housing now in France, we call it inclusive housing or co-housing, collaborative housing. Actually in France, and it's not the same in UK, but in France, some people, some citizens invent, innovating. They are trying to find solutions to their needs. So it's grassroots innovations. I hope I can put it like that. And then, of course, the state, which is very strong in France, legislate. It takes hand on it and try to put some laws, to give some finance, and also to put some laws on those innovations. So in France now we have 2 laws, one on inclusive housing and one on collaborative housing, but remember it comes from the people at first. So inclusive housing is professionally designed and managed housing for disabled or older people based on social and shared life projects. So people are living together in little units, but there is a site manager, there is a professional or project leader. And then collaborative housing is really in the hand of the inhabitants. It's self-managed housing, like in the UK or in Spain, like it has been present from Jean, co-housing. It's the same, habitat participatif in French. I put some datas. We have probably in France 500 collaborative housing that are finished, completed, and there are much more groups who want, of course, to do collaborative housing. It's a trend in France. A lot of people want to live in collaborative housing. Not all people, of course, but a lot of people are interested in this kind of housing. Most of them are intergenerational, but we have also the first senior co-housing. Some people say, okay, it's better to live with seniors because we are getting older together and we can help each other. So that was our our questions, our problematic. Is co-housing a realistic alternative for aging population? Is it good? Does it work? Is it a good way to age? And are people satisfied? And some questions which are more complicated to investigate. Is it possible to our main question was, is it possible to age until the end of life in a co-housing, or can people support each other? What can they do for each other? What can't they do? What don't want? What people are not ready to do for each other? What is this mutual support? We do a participatory action research. It was very complicated. We were a group, just to say there was no, at this time, there is no large academic research on the topic. And there is the co-housing movement. The citizens are beginning to think of it and to make some, there was a practical guide which was written on the topic, but there are no large academic research. So we were a little bit, we are the first. So we were a group of 40 people, some academic research. We were 8 academic research. Then there were the activists of the association, which is leading the project. It's a network of older people, older women actually, who are promoting co-housing. The name of the association is ALAJ. There were also six, seven, and then the other kind of researchers, the third kind of researcher, were the inhabitants or future inhabitants, people in a group who are doing a project, but it's not completing at that time. So we have six groups. 2 groups in Paris and Montauban. The project is not completed. It's not. It's just a group. Paris is a senior LGBT co-housing group. Montauban, it's an older woman group, and then the 4 other are housing projects, co-housing projects with co-housing projects which are completed, finished. The people live in. So Angers is the older one. It's the first generation of co-housing in France, 1983. So the people who are living there at the beginning were young people, young family with children, and then of course with the time they are getting older. So now they are facing the problem of aging. In Toulouse, Orléans and Rouen, it's intergenerational co-housing, and they are new. Toulouse is for 4 years. Okay, so the method was very complicated. I'm sorry, it's a lot of things. I have to, okay. So it's complicated. We really do the research with the people. We construct the questions together. We train the inhabitants to do some semi-structured interviews. So we do all together. It was an adventure. I come to the results. First of all, the groups were at different stage regarding the question of getting older. Some of the group were really were ready to take the questions and and some of the groups were say, getting older, it's a problem. So what we have seen, and we were a little bit surprised, and it's naive from us, but we were surprised that people have so much difficulties to get old. the perceptions on getting old in France are just terrible, just terrible. Getting old is getting ill, is getting what we call in France dependent. It's just terrible. We have this, the public policy in France say, okay, when you're getting old, you will be dependent, you can do nothing, so you have to be cared, managed, and so people have fears. There are lots of taboos. It's complicated. Also, for the people who are living in co-housing, it's complicated to imagine getting old. So it was a surprise. People have also some fears or some doubt. They are not so ready. So they said, okay, we will help each other. But most of the people say, I'm ready to help other, but I don't want to be helped. I don't want to ask for care, for help. I prefer to do things alone, on my own. I'm free. So we have this representation, this ageist and individualist representations, social representation in France, like everywhere. So they have an impact on what the people, how people see things. However, they are all, of course, they want to invent something else. They want to age in another way. That's why they are in a co-housing. So they have hope. It's an utopia. They hope that it happens in another way in a co-housing. So actually, that's what's happened in a co-housing. It really happens in a different way. Okay. We had so its first result, even if it's hard to imagine that we are helping each other in an old age. That's what happened. That's what happened. When someone in the co-housing is getting older, has problems, then he can count on the group. We had the case in Toulouse. It's exactly the same as we had our Eric, someone in Toulouse was very ill. He died during the research, and a little group organized to help him really to act as his family. It was exactly the same because he has no family or very, very far. So it happens like that. People help each other, even if they don't live together. In Montauban, the older woman, they are not living together at the moment. The house is not finished. It's not. They have no. The project is stopped at the moment, but they live not far from each other, so they help each other. So we have really this dynamic with some limits, of course, with some limits. People are ready to do a lot of things, but they have two limits. It's on intimacy. So intimacy, what's the help, which is intimate help is complicated. It can happen, but of course there are some limits on it. And the other things, it's in France we say Alzheimer, so the cognitive problems. So it's some people say, okay, when it comes to this, then. But in the fact, the group in Toulouse helped this man. So people have fears, and they do perhaps more than they imagine they can do. I finished with 3 questions. I'm sorry. The gender questions. We have noticed that women are really much more active. That doesn't mean that some men can't do it. In Toulouse, they get some men in this group, but it has to be okay to be organized, to be discussed, and the women were more active on this. the intergenerational dynamics question. Older people are most ready to help other older people, of course. That doesn't mean that some young people can't do it, but also it has to be organized, to be discussed, and it's not so easy, but it's possible. And the last, I won't say a lot on this spatial dimension. It's very important. The garden, the passageway where people meet in Toulouse, this group of people who help this man meet a lot, because there are a lot of meeting place in the house, in the co-housing, so it plays a role. And the last question is what's happening in the flat of the man who were cared from the group, were helped. He says at the moment, there's too much people in my flat, so probably we think we begin to think about intermediate spaces in the flat. It has to be adapted for care, but it's a question we have in normal housing. So sorry for the time and thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Sorry, I'm being very, very strict with time here. Daniel López now. ¿Cómo quieres? Okay, vale. Sí, claro, sabe cómo. Sí. A ver. Ahí.
Bueno, yo voy a aprovechar que hay traducción simultánea para hacer la presentación en español. Bueno, primero quería agradecer a Melissa por organizar este evento aquí, también al grupo de CHIC y también por traer a Anne, que nos conocimos hace muchos años y no nos habíamos visto cara a cara, o sea que es fantástico estar rodeado de tanta gente y también gente de los grupos de cohousing de aquí, de Barcelona y de España. Y bueno, yo voy a empezar hablando de un proyecto que lleva muchos años. Bueno, primero voy a hacer una aclaración, que cuando se habla de cohousing aquí en España, al menos siempre está la cuestión del tocho, ¿no? O la cuestión de los mayores, ¿no? Si hablamos de vivienda o hablamos de envejecimiento. Entonces yo, digamos que en esta dicotomía me voy a situar más del lado del envejecimiento, un poco en la línea de lo que comentaban. Yo creo que los proyectos de cohousing, independientemente de la forma que tengan, o cohousing, otras formas de habitacionales, lo que hay detrás es una voluntad de envejecer de otra manera, o sea, una necesidad de buscar alternativas. Y en ese marco, digamos, es donde sitúo mi trabajo y voy un poco, no voy a hablar tanto de tocho, de suelo y cosas estas, sino de los procesos que implica envejecer o querer envejecer en este tipo de entornos, ¿vale? Hay gente que habla de envejecer de otra manera o maneras alternativas de envejecer o envejecer intencionalmente también. Bueno, el proyecto MOVICOMA es un proyecto ya muy antiguo que tiene varias fases. Empezamos en el 2012 con un proyecto del Plan Nacional muy centrado en vida independiente, o sea, queríamos explorar formas de lo que se llaman grassroots innovations en el campo del social care y trabajamos discapacidad, salud mental y envejecimiento. Y yo era el encargado de envejecimiento. Entonces, en envejecimiento buscar cosas que fueran grassroots, como que no había, ¿vale? O sea, en la discapacidad sí, en salud mental sí, pero en envejecimiento no había. Y en aquel momento, en el 2012, se empezaron a inaugurar. Se inauguraron, que era Travensón. Salió mucho en los medios y a partir de ahí dije, bueno, este es un buen caso de estudio de grassroots innovation en el caso de envejecimiento, en el campo del social care. Y a partir de entonces, 2012, luego conseguimos financiación del BBVA para hacer realmente un estudio a nivel estatal. Y luego con Yuri Farrell, que es un investigador predoctoral del grupo, consiguió una beca FI y entonces pudo hacer una tesis doctoral que aún no ha acabado, pero bueno, siguiendo a uno de los grupos aquí en Barcelona y también viendo un poco innovaciones no solo vinculadas con el cohousing, sino también en el sector residencial, por ejemplo. O modelos híbridos, pisos con servicios, con atención para personas con Alzheimer, o sea, cómo todo ese sector se estaba moviendo, no solo lo que era más grassroots, que era el caso del cohousing, ¿vale? Lo que voy a presentar resulta de todos estos años de trabajo. Mucho de ese trabajo es a título personal, yo yendo a hacer entrevistas, visitas, un trabajo más etnográfico. Pero cuando tuvimos financiación pudimos hacer muchas entrevistas con grupos de discusión. También hicimos cultural probes con imágenes, diarios, sobre todo en los grupos que ya están viviendo, un poco para captar cuál era la vida cotidiana, o sea, cómo era envejecer en este tipo de entornos. Y también hicimos toda una parte más cuantitativa de cuestionarios con 2 iteraciones, en el 2015-2017, y durante la pandemia también hicimos otra iteración, ¿vale? También hicimos unas jornadas donde invitamos a Melissa, pongo la foto, en el 2017, un poco con este objetivo, el mismo objetivo, que es intentar poner juntar, digamos, a los grupos que había en ese momento en España, también juntar a la gente que estaba haciendo política pública a nivel municipal y de la Generalitat, y también a la gente que está estudiando, o sea, más la parte más académica. Y también con un poco una perspectiva a nivel estatal, pero también con mirada internacional, y por eso trajimos a Melissa para que nos explicara el caso de UK. En total han participado en este estudio 34 grupos, en proceso 25 y conviviendo 9. Bueno, cuando hablamos de cohousing aquí, básicamente lo que hemos visto es que ha habido en los últimos años, hasta el 2021, un crecimiento exponencial, pero exponencial de grupos en formación. O sea, lo que son los grupos que están conviviendo, realmente el crecimiento no ha sido exponencial, sino que está desde 2013 o esta parte, prácticamente no ha habido nuevos, ¿vale? Lo que sí que ha habido es que en todas las comunidades autónomas, por ejemplo, muchas que no había, hay nuevos grupos en formación, o sea que ha habido un gran auge. Hay una evolución temporal que podríamos dividir en olas. Hay un primer proyecto que es Santa Clara, tenemos a un representante aquí de Santa Clara, que es que se inauguró en el 99-2000 y que tardó 9 años. Luego vino una primera ola un poco animado por este proyecto, que son pues Servi Mayor, Pro Futuro, La Muralleta, Travensor, o sea, los que están ahora conviviendo, que serían como la primera ola. Y luego viene la segunda ola, que es como si todo es posible, pues cada vez hay un efecto multiplicador, ¿vale? De esta segunda ola no tenemos ningún proyecto construido, acabado, conviviendo. Seguramente pronto tendremos, aquí me han algunos, hay como algunos que sí que se van a concretar. Pero bueno, una de las premisas era el tiempo, ¿no? Es una de las cosas que preocupa más a los grupos, es el tiempo que implica hacer esto. Y hay un dato que es interesante, que es que en aquel momento, en el 2012, había un discurso de, bueno, son proyectos muy pioneering, o sea, de gente que lo hace todo con sus propios recursos, y hay mucho ensayo-error precisamente por esa razón, ¿no? Entonces, en el momento en el que traemos gente que sabe, expertos, facilitadores, arquitectos, estudiamos otros modelos, pues seguramente vamos a acelerar esos procesos. Los datos muestran que no es así, sino más bien lo contrario, o sea, cada vez se tarda más. ¿Y por qué se tarda más? Bueno, esto lo voy a pasar. Se tarda más porque el suelo es un problema, ¿vale? O sea, cada vez es más difícil acceder al suelo. Los aspectos legales también son un gran problema y entonces eso, digamos, que es un gran impedimento. Cuando hablamos de las olas, también veíamos que, evidentemente, en la primera ola, que son los que están viviendo, normalmente son proyectos grandes, son centros autogestionados, pero son centros. La cuestión de los servicios es muy importante, porque para una inversión tan grande, evidentemente, uno no se va a vivir ahí si no tiene luego los servicios de cuidados, etc. Y claro, el reto para estos proyectos, y luego volveré a ello, es evitar que se conviertan en centros geriátricos. O sea, la institucionalización. O sea, cómo ser un centro muy grande, pero al mismo tiempo evitar convertirse en una residencia. Una residencia en el sentido de que sea un entorno institucionalizado, de institución total, digamos, donde tú tienes tu vida personal quede muy reducida, la vida social quede muy reducida, que todo tenga que ver con los trabajos de cuidados, la organización de los trabajos de cuidados, etc. En la segunda ola, que son estos que están en formación ahora, normalmente lo que tienen en la cabeza son más viviendas autogestionadas. Normalmente las piensan como entornos más pequeños, o comunidades más pequeñas, donde la red de apoyo y la actividad social es muy importante. Y aquí sí que hay como mucho más, están más permeados o tienen más influencia de los contextos internacionales. Había un trabajo nuevamente de facilitación. Muchas veces son grupos que entre ellos no se conocen, o sea, que se forman en el proceso de construir este tipo de viviendas. Y aquí el reto es el contrario. O sea, el reto que se encuentran es porque precisamente van a hacer también una inversión para toda la vida. El reto es asegurar la continuidad asistencial. O sea, ¿qué pasa cuando nos hagamos mayores? ¿Qué pasa si alguien tiene una demencia, ¿no? ¿Alguien va a tener que salir de aquí o se va a poder quedar? Esto es como el reto. Bueno, esta es una publicación sobre la primera o la segunda ola que tenéis aquí, publicada en el 2016, en un capítulo del libro. Bueno, esto lo voy a pasar. El problema también lo voy a pasar, los factores de desarrollo. Bueno, digamos que estamos en cuando estuve en Dinamarca, hablé con Max Pedersen, que también estudió bastante el modelo danés. Me decía, vosotros en España estáis en los 90. Pues sí, nosotros estamos en los 90. Es decir, estamos en una fase donde el trabajo es muy de cada grupo, de autogestión, con sus propios recursos, con muy poca ayuda, y que está empezando a institucionalizarse, pero relativamente, ¿vale? Es decir, que esto quiere decir que los ayuntamientos van a empezar a hacer planes, es decir, a nosotros nos interesa tener tantos cohousing en el municipio. Entonces, cuando eso empieza a desarrollarse, como pasó allí, entonces hay cambio de escala y la cosa cambia. Pero nosotros estamos ahí en ese límite. ¿Qué mayores? Bueno, el perfil, ¿no? Mayoritariamente mujeres, como en todos lados, 62,8%. Aquí hay un dato interesante cuando hablamos de cuidados. El 77% de los hombres están en pareja, es decir, los hombres nunca se van solos. ¿Sí? Las mujeres hay un abanico de situaciones muy diversas. ¿Sí? Entonces, por lo tanto, la cuestión de ir en pareja o no ir en pareja para los cuidados precisamente es bastante determinante. Estamos hablando de perfiles con ingresos medios altos, o sea, clase media, mayoritariamente universitarios, un nivel sociocultural bastante alto, aunque está empezando a cambiar, empieza a haber más diversidad. Bueno, la edad media son 65 años al empezar, viviendo son 75 años y básicamente se plantean como proyectos, que ya lo hemos dicho, alternativa al envejecimiento en casa. O sea, sí quiero envejecer en casa, pero no en la casa en la que estoy. O sea, tiene que ser una casa diferente. Y alternativa a la residencia. No quiero acabar en una residencia, ¿no? Esas son como las dos grandes premisas. Cuando miramos un poco los perfiles, hacemos un análisis de clases latentes, etcétera, nos encontramos que hay como tres grandes perfiles, que esto también creo que es interesante. Por un lado, en relación a las motivaciones, de por qué uno se mete en este tipo de proyectos. Uno es lo que hemos llamado tercera edad activa, ¿vale? Son personas, aquí no hay diferencias de género, están un poco repartidos, pero son personas que no están pensando en la cuarta edad. ¿Vale? Están pensando en la tercera edad, que es la posjubilación en plenitud de facultades y a vivir la vida. ¿Vale? Entonces, la vida comunitaria es una vida comunitaria pensada como enriquecimiento personal, no necesariamente como solidaridad ni apoyo mutuo, sino vamos a pasarlo bien juntos. Dicho de otra manera, cuantos más seamos, mejor nos lo pasaremos, digamos así. Luego hay otro perfil que es la idea de lo que hemos llamado envejecimiento independiente. Que esto son personas que no están muy interesadas en la vida comunitaria ni en la transformación social, están un poco preocupadas por la soledad y lo que buscan es autonomía personal, poder decidir y sobre todo tener un entorno seguro, es decir, adecuado y con servicios, o sea, accesible, que haya servicios, o sea, tienen un poco de miedo de esa cuarta edad, yo esto lo tengo que tener seguro y asegurado, ¿vale? Y aquí sí que hay una diferencia significativa estadísticamente hablando. Digamos que los hombres puntúan más aquí, ¿vale? Luego hay un tercer perfil, que es el envejecimiento comunitario, que sería el canónico del cohousing, digamos así, ¿no? Que es la comunidad es una comunidad de crecimiento personal, pero también de apoyo mutuo, o sea, es fuente de solidaridad. Se quiere evitar la soledad. Hay una idea de transformación social, pero sobre todo vinculada con cambiar los estereotipos de vejez, o sea, el anti-ageism, digámoslo así. La autonomía es muy importante, pero también es muy importante tener servicios. O sea, también esa idea de cuando yo lo necesite, los tengo que tener ahí. Y aquí puntúa también significativamente son mujeres, pero con estudios universitarios. Las mujeres sin estudios universitarios normalmente están motivadas por todo, digamos así. Tienen un anhelo y una energía brutal, pero no son un perfil que podamos discriminar de alguna manera. En cambio, las mujeres con estudios universitarios, que en realidad son el core, digamos, de los proyectos de cohousing en España, pues es esto. Luego, los cuidados. Bueno, ya lo hemos dicho. 2 minutos, sí. Aquí, o sea, cuando fui a Dinamarca me decían, bueno, les preguntaba, bueno, en España el cuidado es un tema y tal. Aquí no, we do not nurse. O sea, cada uno se las arregla individualmente, ¿vale? Se asume que son espacios para la tercera edad, para apoyo mutuo, ¿vale? Eso está claro. La duda es si son para la cuarta edad, digámoslo así. Y hablando con expertos, geriatría, gente que lleva servicios, tienen muchas dudas respecto a esto. O sea, si en algún momento a lo mejor va a implicar que las personas tengan que cambiar, ir a una residencia, ¿vale? Se está haciendo para que no sea así. Es decir, los grupos que están promoviendo estos proyectos están apostando porque se incluyan en el catálogo de servicios sociales, para que puedan acceder a su dotacional, para que esos centros de alguna manera puedan tener servicios dentro, ¿vale? Eso va a implicar que el Inserso va a haber una regulación de esos cuidados y de hecho en las jornadas que hicieron en mayo en Madrid, la secretaria general del Inserso vino a plantear como que el fracaso sería que la gente tuviera que irse a estos sitios. O sea, que tienen que garantizar que la gente pueda vivir hasta el final de su vida allí conteniendo los servicios. Bueno, eso va a poner mucha presión también a los grupos, porque implica gestionar servicios y eso es muy complicado. Pero bueno, lo que comentaba muy rápidamente, los grandes retos, asegurar la continuidad y sostenibilidad de los cuidados, sobre todo para los proyectos que empiezan, implica construir una infraestructura social de cuidados, anticipar los cuidados, establecer consensos sobre todo sobre los límites, que sí y que no, aglutinar conocimiento y experiencia de otros proyectos, pero también de expertos que pueden asesorar, hacer un plan económico, que esto también es bastante complejo. Esto es interesante porque en el momento en que los grupos empiezan a plantearse como que quieren cuidar, van a tener que prever, empezar a anticipar un montón de cosas y hacer un montón de diseño casi de futuro, digamos, ¿no? Y ahí entran en juego un montón de expertos que les ayudan a dinamizar este tipo de procesos. Nosotros pudimos participar en un proceso de este estilo con una cooperativa de Kansapanta, que hizo Yui, que trabaja con nosotros en el grupo, donde como resultado salió esta guía, que es como cómo queremos que sean los cuidados en nuestro cohousing, ¿no? Casi como este diseño, ¿no? De cómo tendría que ser, cómo se podría financiar, etcétera. Que lo podéis consultar, está solo en catalán, pero bueno, es muy interesante. Y luego, claro, la cuestión de los espacios adaptables, ¿eh? Tienen que pensarse de otra manera también, entonces. Y ya para acabar, el segundo reto, que es cuando están viviendo, evitar que se convierta en un geriátrico. Y ahí la clave es que la cooperativa, o sea, esté en manos de los residentes. Esto es muy importante, o sea, los profesionales están al servicio de los residentes. La cuestión del relevo generacional es fundamental, en el sentido de que va a entrar gente nueva que a lo mejor tiene otras ideas, pero va a tener que hacerse cargo de la gobernanza de esa cooperativa y que van a tener que incorporar la idea de los cuidados para los que son más mayores también. Y luego la cuestión del diseño del espacio físico también es muy importante porque hay que evitar que el diseño esté centrado en el trabajador, o sea, en los cuidados como trabajo, y que esté centrado, yo creo, en la vida cotidiana, o sea, en los espacios de vida social, ¿vale? Porque eso, si está centrado solo en lo asistencial, en los cuidados, lo que va a pasar es que la gente joven no va a querer entrar a vivir ahí, ¿vale? O sea, tienen que estar diseñados de una manera, como para todo el ciclo de la vida, de alguna manera, ¿no? Y sobre el uso de tecnologías también flexibles, etcétera, es muy importante. Y ya está, solo quería acabar con esto. Hicimos una encuesta con el tema del trabajo doméstico, ¿no? Que también son cuidados, y salió una cosa muy interesante, que era efectivamente el cambio para las mujeres de ir a vivir a un cohousing es un cambio en el sentido de que hay un reparto diferente de las tareas domésticas, básicamente porque tienen gente contratada. Pues se evitan hacer comidas, se evitan hacer un montón de cosas que harían, porque en muchos de estos proyectos tienen cocina, pero para los hombres no supone ningún cambio. O sea, quedarse en su casa o ir a un cohousing no ha supuesto ningún cambio. Bueno, es un dato significativo. Y bueno, también hacer un poco de publicidad. Esta es una publicación que sacamos de hace un tiempo sobre cómo, comparando los casos sobre las ideas de casa, cómo se construye la idea de casa en dos cohousings diferentes, la idea de cuidado y también la edad, ¿qué quiere decir la edad? Y ya está.
Vale, súper interesante. Muchas gracias. Thank you, the three of you. I'll speak in English for the benefit of everybody up here. Okay, so basically now we wanted to open it up for a general discussion and questions from the audience. Hopefully you'll have questions directed individually or to the three of the speakers. So yeah, I wanted to open that up. And I'll pass the microphone around. So does anybody, oh, there's another one as well. Does anybody have comments, questions, reflections? Maybe say your name and where you're from, where you're coming from.
Soc Conchita Oliver, de Manresa, que estamos en un proyecto intergeneracional en construcción. La pregunta es sobre todo para la ponente francesa, que ha hablado sobre no todo lo podemos hacer, no sé cómo planteaba cuando estaban en la etapa de si podemos hacer todo o no respecto a los finales de la vida. La pregunta es si existe, que supongo que sí, el documento de voluntades anticipadas y que... Perdón. La pregunta es si en Francia, que supongo que sí, existe el documento de voluntades anticipadas en el cual las personas expresan su voluntad llegado el momento del final, ¿sí? Del final de las vidas, ¿no? Hasta dónde queremos llegar, hasta dónde no. Porque me parece que es como muy importante tener esto muy claro.
Yes, absolutely. There are such documents in France. It's possible to do so. And we have noticed that in the co-housing, when they begin to discuss aging, then they come to end of life, of course. And it allows to discuss these kinds of documents, to write it, how to write it collectively. So in the group, they speak about this. Those things. That's very important. When we speak about aging, we speak about death, of course, and how to avoid the big problems. You know, all.
Yeah, we were wondering if New Ground wanted to add to that in terms of your, yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I'm from New Ground, which is an all-female, 50-plus age co-housing on the edge of London. And we have now been living there for 6.5 years. It took a long time to get it off the ground. It took 18 years from first idea to actually moving in. But we've now got 6.5 years experience of living there. And of course, we're all getting a lot older. I mean, we might have started in our 50s, but I'm in my 80s, and we've got 2 people in their 90s. So we're beginning to experience the problems of aging. And Anne has spoken with us in the past and been really helpful. We have set up a scheme that we call Health Buddies. Every resident at New Ground is meant to decide who they would like to have as their health buddies, maybe 2, maybe up to 4 people, but these are the first people they would call on in the event of any problem, falling, whatever it is. They share information, the health buddies group will share information between themselves about who they'd like contacted. Is there a next of kin you'd like contacted, or a close friend or whoever? The idea is that if somebody has a bad fall, which has happened recently, for instance, or has developed an invasive form of cancer, you don't want all 26 people who live there descending on you saying, can I help? Can I do this? Here's some supper, all the rest of it. It's important that there's an inner group which organizes what happens and acts as the liaison between relatives and friends from the outside who may want to come and stay, for instance, if the person is nearing the end of life. And also with the professionals that are involved. We've firmly said right from the beginning that to live in New Ground, you have to be capable of independent living. And independent living, of course, can mean living in your own flat with help coming in, or even a resident carer if you wanted one, but you have to arrange that. What your health buddies will do is help you on that sort of thing, help set up the kind of care you have when you leave hospital, for instance. But we're not going to do the nursing ourselves. And I mean, we've only really within the last year, we've had 1 death, and this has made us think about this a lot. We've only just had about a year of experiencing this health buddy system. First came up in COVID, actually. We thought maybe it would be necessary then, which it wasn't. But I think there's a lot to be said for it, that this is the inner group that will look out for you. And then there's an outer group of your good neighbors who will be there anyway and will come and socialize. But you need a little defense around you. As you were saying, some people are fiercely independent, don't want people coming in their flat all the time, don't want people cooking for them all the time and producing food that they don't feel like eating. Whereas other people are only too happy to have everything done for them if they possibly can. And you've got somehow to mediate that in a community. And so I think our health buddy system is a good one. It needs refinement, but I think it is a good one. And that's one I'd like to put to you all.
Hola, yo soy Ana de Cansatanta, de Barcelona. Todavía no convivimos, pero tuvimos un tiempo en que hablamos mucho sobre el tema de los cuidados, de ahí esa guía que presentaba Daniel, y también de los cuidados alrededor de la muerte. Porque aunque sí que trabajamos sobre cómo nos lo haríamos con ayuda mutua y tal, mientras estuviésemos más o menos bien, planteamos nuestro proyecto hasta el final. Y creo que lo que es importante, ya casi es un trabajo más individual para después poner en el grupo, es saber cada cual hasta dónde quiere llegar. Es importante el tema del documento de voluntades anticipadas, pero tampoco hace falta publicarlo para todo el grupo. Estamos ahí. Pero creo que sí que es importante que en algún momento el grupo sepa qué porcentaje de personas quieren estar hasta el final, estén como estén, con cuidados 24 horas, y qué porcentaje de personas no. Ahora ya tenemos la eutanasia en este país, así es que eso no hace falta tener nombres y apellidos, pero que el grupo sepa qué porcentaje va a querer llegar hasta dónde, me parece imprescindible para saber del futuro y para saber de las finanzas y para saber hasta dónde queremos llegar como grupo. Bueno, solo eso, gracias.
Victoria Lerroux de Travensol. A ver, nosotros somos un cohousing que está en las afueras de Madrid, a 60 kilómetros, y ahora hace 10 años que se inauguró el centro. Hemos tenido muertos, terminales, problemas psicocognitivos. A ver, es que es complejo el asunto, ¿eh? La convivencia se basa en el apoyo mutuo y en caso de enfermedad o de alteraciones de la salud, lo que se intenta es poder diferenciar un poco entre lo que son los cuidados sociales, podríamos llamar, del grupo, que es cuando yo me encuentro mal y me traen el caldito y me vienen a hacer un rato de compañía, o cuando entras en un estado de dependencia que lo que hace falta es lavarte el culo y todo lo que esto conlleva. Esto, aquí no hay solidaridad que valga, esto lo han de hacer profesionales, porque si no el cooperativista se quema haciendo un trabajo que tampoco le toca para nada. La muerte, curiosamente, en Travensol se enfoca con una dignidad que a mí me ha sorprendido siempre, porque es como si formara parte de las cosas naturales de la vida, cosa que por otra parte es así, ¿no? Pero cuando, no sé, han aparecido cánceres de estos muy complicados, que la gente los asume, que yo me quedo, que a pesar de que ya llevamos varios, siempre me quedo pensando que no lo entiendo, lo bien que la gente lo puede llevar con un soporte espontáneo de los compañeros. Allí no se ha hecho la lista esta oficial para que no sobresaturar al enfermo con muchos cuidados. Se ha hecho de forma espontánea. Incluso la primera persona, la segunda que murió, que era la más joven de todo el grupo, ella se hizo una lista y dijo: me han de venir a cuidar estos, los otros que ni aparezcan. Entre otras, su propio marido es el que quedaba bastante apartado, porque el hombre se angustiaba mucho y se lo pasaba realmente mal. Pero vaya, que se hizo una selección de quién podía acceder a cuidarla. A ver, nosotros allí, uno de los problemas importantes que me gustaría saber cómo se resuelve esto en otros cohousing es las demencias, porque Travensol es finalista, sobre todo por una parte de los cooperativistas, por la otra parte no tanto, pero de momento funciona que allí hasta el final, en las condiciones que sea. Claro, para empezar, ni arquitectónicamente tenemos las condiciones para que esto sea así. Tenemos una señora con un Alzheimer adelantado, pacífica y tranquila, pero esta, cuando le da, se hace el petate y se va. Entonces, claro, se ha tenido que cambiar el sistema de puertas dentro de lo que se puede cambiar, porque tampoco se puede bloquear un centro de estas características, porque vienen los bomberos y te dicen que ni se acopla. Vale. Uf, qué descanso. ¿No? O sea que, para empezar, arquitectónicamente ya hay centros que no pueden abarcar hasta el final, por el sistema de puertas, por el sistema de desplazamiento por dentro, por cómo se concibe toda la convivencia, y depende también si la persona con el deterioro es disruptiva o no es disruptiva, porque hay veces que puede alterar todo el funcionamiento. Bueno, esto es lo que se me ocurre, pero luego tenemos tiempo, ¿no?, para ir hablando.
Sí, va a haber tiempo de discusión también en el taller más adelante. Gracias, Victoria. No sé si acá quieren los compañeros, Dani o Anne o Jim, comentar si conocen de casos donde han habido estos casos de demencia, cómo se ha manejado, o comentar sobre algo de lo que han comentado de los sistemas de cuidado.
Bueno, yo al hilo de la cuestión de cómo gestionar o cómo hacer que estas situaciones, un caso de demencia o casos de demencia o dependencia que requiere trabajos, lo lanzo a los grupos porque sé qué pasa. Hay como una previsión, ¿no?, a través de la edad, por ejemplo, ¿no?, que esto creo que es bastante común. También me lo encontré de manera informal, no muy... pone una edad de ingreso a los proyectos, ¿no? O sea, cómo se gestiona el hecho de, bueno, pues tú eres demasiado mayor o tú eres, queremos gente más joven, un poco en previsión casi de que, bueno, llegado un cierto tiempo, pues vamos a tener un número limitado o gestionable de personas con mucha gran dependencia o incluso con alguna demencia, ¿no? O sea, cómo se gestiona la cuestión de la edad. Un poco porque creo que luego en la práctica, y esto quizás también para discutir, no sé hasta qué punto la cuestión de la edad es una garantía, porque muchas veces las personas, una, se mueren antes, dos, como decía Victoria, a lo mejor pues hay una persona que desarrolla una demencia, pero no es una demencia disruptiva y a lo mejor se puede gestionar de alguna manera. Y yo por lo que sé, muchas veces hay como una necesidad de tenerlo todo controlado, como prevenirlo todo a través de la edad, casi como si fuera un estado, como si fuéramos estados. Y luego la realidad práctica te demuestra que no sé si acaba de funcionar eso. Ese es un punto. Luego, cuando estuve en Dinamarca, también me llamó la atención porque se encontraban con estas situaciones también de personas, son proyectos que llevan muchos años y habían tenido varios casos de personas con demencia. Me explicaban, hombre, hay un momento en el que ellos no hacen cuidados, ¿no? Pero tiene un momento en que tienen que intervenir, cuando es disruptiva o cuando supone algún problema. Entonces llaman a la familia. Entonces luego la familia llama a la municipalidad. Entonces es un asunto que tiene que gestionar el Estado. El Estado o la familia, pero no nosotros como comunidad. Esa separación que ayer me pareció como radical, o sea, todo el rato decían lo mismo. En el caso español hay una nebulosa, no es tan así. O sea, sí que hay una idea de que el grupo, la comunidad, tiene cierta responsabilidad para con el cuidado de las personas, incluso en situaciones de demencia. Entonces, ¿cómo se gestionan los límites sobre hasta dónde entra o no entra? Es un asunto muy complejo en el caso de aquí. Y en el caso de danés parecía que no, a lo mejor también lo era, pero bueno, en una entrevista te dicen que no. Pero bueno, creo que es un tema a discutir.
I mean, yeah, I was going to hand it over because I think my view of this, Jim, I don't know if you agree, is that I think what we've seen perhaps is somewhere between those two or both of those that you're mentioning, Danny, like that there is a kind of blurriness in some of the cases, and that there is in other cases a very kind of firm line about what those limits of care are. Or there's, and some cases where you have that official line, and I think Anne pointed to this in her case. So you have the proclamation of a stance, and then you have the practice, which will be very different. Or that stance might change over time as well, right? With the experiences. So I don't know if you want to comment on that a bit more, Jim.
I mean, yes, not much to that other than, yes, I think blurry is a good word. That I think in the groups that we have worked with, we, luckily for the groups, I guess we weren't able to experience any dementia situations. I think that blurriness as well, it's wherever you set your limits as a group, that might not work out. Individuals might voluntarily overstep those limits, or sometimes perhaps, I think you were saying there's this idea amongst groups that co-housing can solve every problem of aging, and perhaps it simply can't. There are limits for some people with dementia that just can't be met, and I think the real difficulty, particularly with dementia, and although it didn't really occur during our case study period, I think the groups thought about it a lot and talk about it a lot, and they do wonder when the situation isn't clear. We in a group who are not here today. It was much talked about. One member felt that there are two members with dementia, and we weren't sure because it was debated amongst the group. It's not this clear-cut thing of it's not an illness that you say you have it, you do not. It's a matter of opinion quite often and different behaviours. And I think as researchers we're thinking, right, how does this work? What does each group formally agree to do? But perhaps there is no right answer.
Josie.
Thank you. My name is Josie Josefina. I live
New Ground co-housing in London. And for me, this is the big question that we may face, that we are facing, I think, is that, yes, somebody's opinion on whether you're going demented or not, feels to me intrusive, that the community might get in trouble. So what is the intervention? Where is the intervention? We do have one member who's aging. I'm not sure quite how old she is, but she hasn't, as far as I know, had a... You don't know who I'm talking about. we live in the same co-housing. It gets intimate in the most brutal way at times. No, not the most brutal, but it gets a little bit plain. So we have a member who is known for not doing anything. She's often talked about as somebody who doesn't contribute. She doesn't have curtains to her flat. And but people do mention that she may be going demented, but she hasn't had a test of any description. And I find it difficult to hear people talking like that. I don't have an opinion. I think she's a little eccentric, very intelligent woman. But every time one of my neighbours says, I think she's got dementia, I find it, almost offensive. I find it really disturbing because I think maybe I'll end up her, because I'm quite eccentric and intelligent and have a lot of books and clutter and that sort of thing. And I really don't want to be judged like that. So I'm very interested in other people's sense of where the policy, where the decision-making, where the intervention is best. At what point? So I haven't got any answers, I'm afraid, only questions.
I think we really can't generalize about what's happened. Every case is special, and I can tell about this case in Toulouse that I know. And this man didn't want that people intervene, but nevertheless, a group helped him organize and help him, and I think it was a good thing. Sometimes he said, "Oh, that's marvelous! Thank you so much," and that's a way for me to not to go to the nursing home. And another day he says, I want to go to the nursing home. You bother me. I can't stand all those people helping me, and I don't want to. So every case is different. And what we have learned from this research, my conclusion would be, what is important is to have discussion on this when it's possible, when people want, of course, and to deconstruct, to fight against some fears and taboos, and just to put the problem on the table and speak about it, and to be ready to everything. You can't anticipate what will happen. You don't know. But to have discussions in the collective about what could happen and what we will do, and of course it happens in another way, but people are ready to do things that they can't imagine that they would be able to do. So the strong of the collective to fight against the fears and the taboos it's incredible. And for me this is the basis of everything that can happen, and we don't know what.
Yeah, I would like to add something to it. I think there's also this imaginary of dementia, like, it's like fourth age is equated to dementia. So it's really like, the thing that people most are scared about. And but I think it's important to try to reconceptualize what is dementia, because there are some imaginaries and they are very powerful, and they operate like you say. I mean, it's like, oh, this is a bad thing. It's going to be like it's something that you are excluding somebody because you are adding the label of you are becoming demented. So it's like you're being put aside, something like that. And I think it could be interesting to involve, activists in dementia. There are some people trying to change the imaginaries of dementia. What is dementia? It's like in independent living. So, for example, with disability, something it happens. I mean, you need to reconceptualize what does it mean to have a disability, or what does it mean to have dementia, in a collective way, but maybe inviting people to change the imaginary that is. It's very powerful. I mean, it's like ageism. It's the same kind of imaginary. So aging means being dependent, being frail, blah, 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 blah. And it's everything. So it's like once you are labeled as old person, all these attributes stick to you. And this is something that you need to change. But I think it's similar with dementia, that in order to prepare for the community, you need to start thinking about dementia in a different way. Because otherwise, it's being used like a way to exclude people or to like put people aside. And this is very annoying, and of course, you don't want to be part of this. This is it's kind of cruel. Yeah.
Can I add a bit? And I interrupted my neighbour because she was talking about somebody quite different from the one I'm going to talk about. And I'm sorry, I apologize. We do have one person who has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and is now really quite bad with it. We've done our best to make sure she is included in things. We've even had somebody come and give us a talk on Alzheimer's, to which he came and to which he contributed. And all that is good and positive. But she has reached a stage now when, for instance, she very independent, wants to go out and wants to do things on her own. She has a carer in the morning, but in the afternoons she can wander off and she'll get lost. And it's scary for her and it's worrying for us. And we can't be jailers. We can't lock the door and say you can't go out. And that is when practical problems come up and it's very difficult. I have no idea what the solution is. And she herself is looking at residential homes because she realizes probably this is needed. But she spent a couple of weeks in one and she hated the fact she couldn't wander off and go home if she wanted to. It was just down the road from where we live. But, she was, as it were, locked in, and the jailers would tell her, no, you can't leave, sorry. It's a horrible situation to be in. And it's very difficult for the community.
Can I? Oh, Jeremy, yeah. Go ahead.
A comment first and then a question. Jeremy from the Housing Learning Improvement Network in the UK. Perhaps I'll take this off actually, yes. The work that's been done in the UK demonstrates that the majority of people living in some form of intentional community where there's someone else with dementia is that we're quite happy to enable people to grow our own. We know these people, and over time we get used to their behaviours. Sometimes, yes, very challenging. Whether they're reported or diagnosed dementia or not, but a report that was published by the UK government 2 years ago says, look, in housing there's no vaccine for dementia. We need to become much more dementia friendly, both in our co-housing but in our broader communities. And it comes back to the point about how we challenge ageism. We also got to be more dementia ready. And if people are interested in this, do have a look at Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, which really sets out the issues very neatly about sort of respect and dignity for people in later life, of all people, but people in later life. Oh, the question. Sorry. Apologies for that. My question really was whether from a French, Spanish or English perspective, do you think one of the biggest challenges is the regulation of our housing and care is not integrated, or it's too segregated? Is there, so when we're talking about creating intentional communities that wish to be some more supportive, we're denied some of that because of the regulatory processes that we're having to battle.
Que si, oh, that if, so sorry, I'm just translating here your question. Yeah, whether the regulatory, so the legal regulatory context of social care, the care side of things in France, care in collaborative community, the care that the community wants to have been more difficult, right? Do the regulations somehow clash with with care that could be happening in community? More or less, yeah?
Well, I was just going to say, actually, because I have the advantage the whole team's here, including Karen.
Yeah.
My background is housing.
Yeah.
So maybe
Karen, do you want to say something about that? Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so Karen West, I'm with the Bristol, the UK team. I'll come back to Jeremy's question in a minute, but I think what we've been looking at these 6 communities, 2 types really. The co-housing is one, and the other that Jim has referred to are different in the sense that they have services on site. So there'll be a warden or a site manager or somebody. And what seems to be the difference is this kind of management of this transition of what Danny refers to as the transition between the 3rd age and the 4th age, is that that's so much easier in those other communities because you've got somebody's professional judgment that comes into play at some point, and they're much more objective. They're not part and parcel of the community exactly, although they are very connected to it, but they're sort of in some senses at arm's length. So that makes that so much easier. And what seems to really define co-housing in this situation is the sheer intensity of the emotional labour that goes into negotiating that transition and working out where the boundaries are and what people should and shouldn't be doing for each other. And I don't know if there's any sort of escaping from that really, because, you know, living in co-housing it does involve labour, doesn't it? Both emotional and physical labour. And maybe that's just kind of part and parcel of the situation. And, you know, you are the pioneers and you're working out this new way of being in later life, aren't you? So I think it is going to be emotionally quite draining, and I don't know that there's any getting away from that. Back to Jeremy's question. I mean, Jeremy knows the legal landscape probably better than I do of the, you know, in housing and care. But the situation in the UK is that if you were to have somebody who was hired in as a carer for all the residents, so you had a kind of service that was brought in, then you would be subject to regulation. You'd have to have the Care Quality Commission certification in our case. I'm not sure how that is in other countries, but that certainly is a barrier to that thought that you could have somebody that would come in and provide that sort of service at some point.
Vale. No, contestando la pregunta de Jeremy, en el caso español sí que hay una necesidad de regulación y sobre todo vinculada con la cuestión de los cuidados para que estos espacios puedan tener efectivamente, contratar gente y profesionales para que se pueda cuidar. En la diapositiva hace unas semanas estuve en Madrid, en el Inserso, se discutía esta cuestión y una cosa que me llamó un poco la atención y un poco la misma línea es que, claro, una vez el Estado interviene como para garantizar el derecho a las personas que viven allí a que reciban pues los servicios a los que tienen derecho, automáticamente, evidentemente, esa comunidad pasa a tener una responsabilidad diferente. Tiene una responsabilidad respecto a los cuidados de sus vecinos, no solo como vecinos, sino que de alguna manera son delegados del Estado, digamos, en la ejecución de esa responsabilidad. Entonces ahí yo me pregunto, cuando eso pasa, ¿qué cambio se produce en la comunidad. O sea, que el estatus que adquieren sus vecinos también cambia, porque no solo son vecinos que van a ayudarse, sino que están gestionando un servicio que está al mismo tiempo siendo auditado, controlado por el Estado y que tienen, o sea, de alguna manera es un derecho que todo el mundo tiene. Entonces, es una responsabilidad mayor. Eso, cuando estuve en Dinamarca, recuerdo en algunas entrevistas con algunos grupos que tenían muy claro que ahí no iban a entrar. Y recuerdo una informante que me dijo, sería un abuso para con mis vecinos, porque les estaría poniendo una responsabilidad a mis vecinos que es demasiada. A mí me genera un mixed feelings, porque sé que la manera que tienen los grupos de cohousing en España de poder tener proyectos autogestionados con servicios pasa por incorporar el cohousing dentro de los catálogos de servicios sociales para poder acceder a suelo dotacional, que ese es el tema. Pero al mismo tiempo, eso puede ser una vía que los acabe convirtiendo en instituciones y que las comunidades tengan que asumir unos roles y unas funciones que no sea un cohousing, o sea otra cosa. Entonces, ahora estamos en un momento, yo creo, como curioso.
I finally understood the question because of the answers. Sorry. No, there are no special regulation. Actually, there are regulations, but not for people who are helping other people. In France, dependent people who are aging, are cared by their family, by their children, by their husbands, wives. So that's the main help care in France towards people who suffers from dementia. So it's in co-housing. It's exactly the same. It's private help, private care. The difference is that there is a group, a collective, and this group, the members of this group can help each other. They can support each other. They can discuss about the things, and it's much better than in a family. So it's very important. And there are no special regulation if people help someone in a co-housing. It's a private thing. It's like at home. So just a details, it's very important details. I must have told it about the case I speak about. In this group, which helps these people, this man, there was a former nurse, and she has lead the whole things, and she has coordinated, and she has made the relationship to the professionals who are coming to the. So it was very important. Each case is different. In this case, they can go very far because of the presence of the work of this woman. So it's not always the case. Of course, it's very special.
Okay, I think voy a hacer un comentario y le paso a Victoria. Just because I thought it was interesting, something you said, Danny, that I think potentially is also a situation that the other countries are facing, which, and I find interesting, which is around the expectations or the increasing expectations of the state, potentially, that these groups, whether they're established or forming, play that role of social care. So I think it's a very interesting situation whereby I think part of what we're discussing is that this question of care and how it's managed within communities is fraught with all sorts of questions and tensions. It's not quite worked out, is it? And it's diverse, almost by necessity. And there's a kind of desire for that care to be more attuned to state regulations, perhaps, etc., to be more mainstreamed, maybe in some way. And yet, at the same time, if then the state puts the onus of care on groups in a particular way, like you were saying, what does that then do potentially to the spirit, the quality, the values of these groups and what they're intending to do? with and beyond care, right? Because it's so much more than that. So I just think it's something I think to think about or to ask openly about, in a moment where we know that neoliberalization is, ever greater, and that privatization of care is becoming more important. How do we deal with, or how do groups think about that question and the imbrications with the state, I suppose, or something like that. Sorry, that's just a comment. Victoria, I'll leave one more question and then we can go to our coffee break, which will be upstairs.
A ver, para amenizar un poco la situación, hay que recordar que en España cada comunidad autónoma tiene una legislación diferente. Pues ¿quién lío en faig? A ver, entonces en Madrid, por ejemplo, ahora se ha cambiado la ley de cooperativas, que ha entrado en vigor uno de estos días de mayo. O sea que es muy reciente y incluye la figura del cohousing, lo que quiere decir que si cumples los requisitos que no son complicados, o sea que es tener adaptado el estatuto a los requisitos de que el objetivo social es tener los cuidados de los cooperativistas que te toquen, entonces puedes contratar directamente al personal que va a cuidar, porque hasta ahora para contratar personal tenías que recurrir a una empresa, a la empresa que fuera, quiero decir, hay muchas que tienen como la acreditación oficial para poder contratar personal y pasártelo a ti. Con lo cual se encarece el producto porque es un intermediario que contrata, que luego tú recontratas y te encarece el asunto. Porque luego, claro, todo esto, a ver, nosotros lo que hemos intentado hacer ha sido crear una comisión para atender los problemas de dependencia. Y esta comisión es la que se encarga de los cuidados. Una cosa es el dependiente que pueda tener una dependencia física, que a lo mejor lo que necesita es un poco de ayuda domiciliaria. Alguien que te haga la cama, que te vaya a verter las basuras, cosas de este tipo. Y otra es cuando la dependencia ya es un tercer grado de dependencia, que quiere decir que te has quedado invalidado para la vida cooperativa. Entonces es cuando entran en juego más atenciones, más talleres con actividades más o menos adaptadas a las necesidades, los servicios de fisio, de gimnasia. Y esto queda cubierto por el sistema de Travensol. Y la parte económica, hemos hecho una especie de arreglo mutual entre nosotros, de forma que el coste de lo que cuesta la dependencia total lo pagamos entre todos en un 70%. O sea, se ha incrementado la cuota mensual que pagamos cada uno en una cantidad para cubrir el 70% de la atención. El que necesita la atención y la está usando paga el aumento más el 30% correspondiente. Esto ha conseguido abaratar mucho lo que es la dependencia, porque ahora, a ver, puedo decir cantidades y engañaros porque son aproximadas, pero lo mismo un grado 3, que es el que necesita más horas a la semana, puede salir por 600, 700 euros al mes. Lo cual, a la hora de pagarlo, claro, te encarece tu bolsillo, pero no es nada comparable a lo que este tipo de ayuda significaría si tú lo has de pagar tú de forma individual. Yo personalmente, quiero decir, no institucionalmente, sino personalmente, siempre he creído que un paso intermedio entre todo esto serían los centros de día. Son los centros de día, que es estas instituciones donde va la persona afectada, tiene unos talleres, va la gente, en el caso rural, de varios pueblos, y en los casos urbanos va la gente que le toca por distrito y por tener un grado 2 de dependencia, pero que permite alargar la estancia en el cohousing más tiempo sin alterar ni la vida del cohousing ni la vida del usuario, porque es como intermedio. Hay un servicio del centro de día, te vienen a buscar con un autocar, te llevan al centro de día, te devuelven, se organiza la comida en el centro de día, más las actividades, y la gente vuelve a dormir a casa. A mí esto, cuando funcionan bien estos centros, me parece una muy buena solución. En Travensol se ha montado el centrito de día, pero para mí, como individuo, no como institución, tiene el inconveniente de que la gente sigue viendo las mismas caras a los mismos compañeros, están hasta el gorro de verse tantas horas al día y con actividades que siempre son las mismas. Porque claro, son personas que tienen la movilidad limitada por el mismo deterioro que tienen. Estoy de acuerdo con la compañera inglesa. Las etiquetas psiquiátrico, neurológicas, normalmente se utilizan siempre como insultos. Es como una agresión las etiquetas. Lo que pasa es que hay demencias y existen.
Un último comentario de Karen y entonces nos vamos al café.
Thanks very much. That was really interesting, that last comment there. And I was thinking that we're talking about co-housing as if we're all talking about the same thing, but I don't think we are we? Because, you know, you're talking about cooperatives where there's already this kind of spirit of collectivizing risks and the costs of care, whereas in co-housing, what we're talking about is private leaseholders who sort out their own, you know, mortgages and so on. And so there's much more kind of independence and less, I would imagine, of a kind of spirit and willingness to kind of collectivize the costs and risks of care. But the other thing I was thinking about, you know, what do we mean by care? I mean, we're just focusing on the care that people give to each other whilst they're co-resident. But what we're also seeing in the research is that the care that people continue to give to one another even after people have moved on. So, you know, we have an example of somebody who's moved into residential care who's still very much looked after by members of the co-housing because they've retained that friendship. And I would probably go as far as to argue that the quality of the care that he gets within that residential care is greater because he's got people advocating for him that he wouldn't otherwise have had. So there's lots of other ways of thinking about care. And I thought your point about day centres was really well made in that context as well.
All right, thank you. That's been a really fascinating discussion, which we will continue. We're just going to have a 15-20-minute coffee break now. The coffee is just upstairs. There's elevators as well as stairs to go to the second floor. There's an atrium where we'll have the coffee. What we were going to ask people, we're going to show the little film that we've made from our project. It's 8 minutes? 8-minute video, so we won't play it now so we can all go get our coffee, but maybe if people can make their way down. It is in English because it's just been made. We don't have subtitles yet. So, you know, if somebody doesn't want to watch it in English, they don't need to come. But we'll play it here in about 10 minutes. We'll put it on if people want to come down and watch it. Thank you.